right. Welcome back to another episode of the Spone Trained Subconscious Programming Podcast. This is my first podcast produced since the Resonance event in Playa del Carmen a few weeks ago. There were 19 of us. We had an absolute blast, tons of transformations. The testimonials have been awesome. So I'm excited. I know a lot of you are already planning on coming to the event in Vegas. I can't wait to see you there. The one in August coming up. And without further ado, let's get into this episode. I have on one of my best friends and marketing genius. He was a guest on, I think, my second or third podcast. And I am joined today by Chris Crawford. Him and I got trapped in Panama a few years ago for 2 months. And so we've been basically picking each other's brains about all things hypnosis and marketing and mindset, all kinds of stuff. And so I'm honored to have him on today and to share some of our conversations with you guys. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Super stoked to be here again. And hey, the video from your Resonance event, it looked phenomenal. I've talked to a few people that were there. Everybody's like, that was the thing I didn't know that I needed. You know, just amazing. So good job, man. Well done. Well done.
Thank you. I mean, a lot of that stuff comes from the ideas and the things that we talk about. So that's why I like to surround myself with people like you. And even the fact that I sold that out was a big head nod to you and helping me get my marketing message straightened out.
Stop.
Which is what we're going to get into today. But first, Chris, so let's kind of recap. If you guys want to hear more about his story, you can go listen to that earlier episode. But let's recap on kind of how you got to where you are with your marketing knowledge.
Yeah. You know, interestingly, I would actually narrow it down without, you know, the story is that I was in the short story, the nutshell of it. I was working a career for 8-9 years. I was miserable, but I was making okay money, and something so many of us can relate to, just doing something for money, right? And it lacked passion, it lacked fulfillment, but I was afraid to leave. People around me at the time, you know, told me, don't quit, don't leave. You got the good job, work there for another 30 years till retirement kind of thing. But like, I just couldn't do that. And I finally got the courage to quit, and everybody called me an idiot and told me I was stupid for going for it. Great
That's
support.
how you know you're doing the right thing, right?
Right. Yeah. Great support system I had. And then in a year, I was just in such a bad place financially. The business wasn't working well. It was, I wasn't selling anything, and I was struggling financially, and I'd maxed out my credit cards, and I had to move out of my apartment. I basically, at this point, I was camping out, and a lot of, even the people that told me that I was stupid didn't even know how bad it was. But what they knew, they were still like, maybe it's time to quit and go back to that job. One of those things, right? And I just knew what was back there, and I couldn't. And instead, I obsessed with, how do I make this business work? Like, that really was the driving question. Like, just how do I make it work? How do I make it work? And I did. From that place, built a company that's done now to date somewhere around 9 million in online sales. Built a great team of people. Worked with a lot of the world's biggest brands like Disney, LG Electronics. The list goes on and on. A lot of marketing firms. And then all those people that called me an idiot were like, I always knew you had some gift, you know what? And then coming and being like, well, what's the secret? What's the thing? And I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? So that's the nutshell. What got me to this space of talking about marketing was, as I built that, it was kind of empty. You know, it was like I had this success, I had financial freedom now, and I had time freedom because I had a team around me. We had a big office space. And I was like, you know, something's lacking here, right? And I started traveling a ton, spent a year and a half going through Central America, did a, massive road trip, and it was great. But then there's only so long I can hang out on a beach for until I'm like, okay, now I'm bored. Like I need to do something else. And so I started thinking like, okay, what's something I can do? And I came back home, and that's when I started to be like, you know, I want to teach this marketing and sales stuff, right? The stuff that I figured out, how I attracted so many clients. I want to teach what I learned. And so I started that, and it was really fulfilling. But then what I found was, and this is, I would actually say this is around the time maybe we did the last podcast, was probably in around this time period, maybe a little while after this, where what I found was they were taking courses with me and learning and being excited and like, oh, I understand why my stuff's not growing and I see what I need to do different. And they'd recognize all that, but then they weren't going and applying anything. And I'm like, what's going on here? So it led me to quit doing it because I didn't want to just sell courses and make money. I wanted to see people succeed. And that's what really caused me to dive deep into the mindset world, and where a lot of the things that you share and teach and I've learned from you and we've learned together. And when I say together, usually it's you saying, hey, Chris, we got to go do this training in Toronto. Sign up now. We're going to check it out. And I'm like, who is this? What's this about? Fine. Okay, I'm in. But so many of those things really helped me to learn deeper mindset pieces of why we don't take action, why people were being inconsistent in their businesses, not growing, and those kinds of things. So that's really all what's led me here.
Yeah. And I think that gives us kind of two branches of what we'll talk about today. Is there's a marketing piece and then there's a mindset piece, right? And so if you're in any kind of a business or you do anything for money, like you have both of those factors in play at all times. And the stuff we're going to talk about, some of these pitfalls, like you and I aren't immune to some of the things that hold people back, right? No one's immune to them. It's just a matter of degree, bringing them into conscious awareness, and then doing better as you know better going forward, right? And so let's start with maybe the marketing piece. So for those, how to think about marketing, and then we'll get into mindset. So Chris, I was told if I just start like taking pictures of myself, doing cool things and posting inspirational quotes, and I put them all over the internet, like I'd get a big following and I'd make a bunch of money. People would want to advertise with me. This is how it works, right?
Well, this is how it works, and that's the things you have to do wrong to figure out that that's not what works. Totally. That's exactly what we all hear, right? Like, just put it out there and they will come.
So, and this is true with, like, let's say someone like I thought, and you as well, like I thought I had a great product, right? Like I do have a great product, but I still wasn't selling. Like, and I know there's a lot of people out there who do, like I've met them who do really magic, amazing, groundbreaking stuff. And it's like, when they go to sell, it's like crickets, or they don't have any followers. So how do we get from like, hey, I'm actually really good at what I do, to I have a following, I'm making money. Maybe we don't even need a following to make money, right?
Yeah. 100%. And so that first business that I built, I didn't have a following there at all. And it was completely off cold traffic. What I dove deep into at the time was a lot of the stuff that marketing companies were studying back in the 60s, kind of the Mad Men era. And I mean, because these brands have it down, right? It's like somewhere between the big brands that are doing hundreds of millions of dollars and spending millions of dollars on market research, and then the little guy, the rest of us, the entrepreneurs. It's like there's this knowledge gap, which is odd because we're in the information era where everything seems available, which it is, but you got to know what to look for. So one of the things that this is 8-10 hours of content to try to distill into like a 3-minute answer. One of the things is really understanding the classic key points, right? Who's your avatar? Obviously, we all know that. We've heard that. Go deep in your niche and all that. But also, one of the things that struck for me was what is the key problem that we solve for people, and what is their awareness of the problem, right? So if you're, if we're out there, somebody's saying, we know a lot of people in hypnosis world and that kind of realm. And if somebody like that is saying, hey, I do hypnosis, and somebody's like, well, who cares? What's that do for me? And it's like, but if they say, hey, do you want to, solve this thing? Do you want to stop procrastinating? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to whatever? I can help you with that. Well, now they might be more interested because they're speaking a language they understand and they can relate to.
Yeah. And I think, I struggle with this. I think a lot of people do in the beginning is discovering that avatar, right? Like, I know mindset, I know hypnosis, I know how to like change people's emotions in their programs. Like I can work with anybody.
Yeah.
Right. And when you work with anybody, you really work with nobody.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I did some processes with you and I got really clear, like, oh, my person's an entrepreneur. They're probably in real estate. They're into personal development. They've read these specific books. When they have like this problem, they speak about it like this, and they're not searching for hypnosis. right? Like they're
Yeah.
searching for motivation and strategies, and like how to end self-sabotage is a big thing that hits a lot of people, or procrastination. And so when I started saying that, I started speaking their language, meeting them where they were on the journey. They were like, oh, this is interesting. And then I could lead them into hypnosis or an event or, the podcast or a course. But it was only once I got really clear on the avatar, and I got this from you, is where they were on the journey and how they speak about their own problems and their own kind of dreams and goals, right?
Yeah, 100%. And then to tie one other little piece onto all of that is then how do our stories and our experiences resonate with them? And this is sort of like, this really gets into, I think, where I see barriers for people that are trying to build audiences and sell products is they may know their avatar. Most people have an idea who they want to work with. But then it's like, as each step goes beyond that, it gets a little less clear and a little less clear. And what I mean is, when it comes to the stories and the content, they aren't super clear on their own story that the person needs to hear. And so often that needs to be about some vulnerability, to talk to the struggle that we had, the challenge, how hard it was, the pitfalls, the things that are going to make the person put their hand up and say, oh my gosh, that's exactly where I am, And when they can relate in that way, and then the person's able to talk to where they are now and how their thing got them there, it creates an aha for somebody of like, oh, that's why I need it. Where what people end up doing is they talk about what they do. And that's Simon Sinek's classic thing, right? Most companies talk about what they do, some talk about how they do it, but great companies, great business leaders talk about why they do it. And that why is key.
Yeah, but it's like, it's so important to know where your avatar is on the journey, right? Yeah. So for me, most people that come into my world are like, they're on this journey to financial freedom. And not everybody, some people are already there. Some people they just don't, that's not their thing. But a lot of them, and I think for you and I, that's kind of what pushed us into personal development too, is this like becoming my own person, building a business, becoming financially free. And so like, where are you on the journey? Are you at your job trying to figure out a way out? Like, that's a totally different message than someone who's got a business already going and they're trying to get refinement, right? Yeah. And so you have to speak to where they are specifically on the journey. And that's not only knowing your avatar, it's knowing at the point they're at, where do you want to work with them and what are they saying on the way there, right?
Can I just say, man, I love hearing all that come out of your mouth. Man, you have got this, right? But you're such a good example of somebody who's spent a lot of time saying, I've got something I really want to get out there. I've spent a bunch of time trying to do it and it's not been working, and just going deeper and deeper and deeper into learning the nuances of how people really do this. And that's exactly what I did too, right? And that's why, I mean, you and I are kindred spirits in so many ways, but this is a nutshell of it. And I think you're just hitting the nail right on the head, is that clarity of where they are and the stories that are going to help them, and the educating. And typically, like, to give you an idea, the people that I work with is usually creators that want to make a difference, often coaches, people that want to serve others. They've got programs, events, masterminds, courses, right? Yeah, you might know somebody like that. People in that space that then either are trying marketing, it's not working, or they've hired marketing that didn't pay off, because I've done that many times.
We'll talk about that. That's a whole other topic.
I know you've done that. Or they're uncomfortable with sales and they get awkward with sales. So they give their time away for free or for cheap. And so those are usually the people that I'm working with. And I know all the things that are in their way, but they don't know all the things that are in their way. So my job is not to just educate them on everything to try to get them to work with me. It's to connect with them in the right way that makes them go, man, this guy can help me in some way. Like, this guy's been where I am, and here he is. He's learned some things, and he's done, and so this person can help me in an authentic, genuine, connected way. Because we can also see through the people that are just trying to sell us crap,
Absolutely.
Right? Like, we can all see that.
Well, I think the most powerful way that I've seen you do this, I know, when we were both kind of starting speaking, well, I was starting to speak anyway. You may have been doing it for a while. in Cabo at the M1 event. And I remember, we both kind of gave our talks and I watched you and you told an amazing story, right? Like I was teaching and I got really good feedback, but you told the story and people were like, shut up and take my money. And so the idea that as we tell stories, we can bring people through those emotional journeys that we've taken, show them that we solve something in a unique way that can help them get the same outcome.
Yeah.
So this is why you got to know where your avatar is on the journey, because that'll affect what story you tell. And so let's talk about how important storytelling is and maybe some of the highlights of story structure and how to influence people with stories, Chris.
Yeah. Well, I know that you've been diving into the same stuff that I have, and thanks for pointing that out and really tuning into that, because it is. And I made the same mistake early on that I think so many people make of really trying to just talk about what I do and the product and not telling a story at all. And it just doesn't feel right. Like if I sit here and say to somebody like, hey, you need a sales script to do, you should learn how to sell well. And, I've got this sales program, and if you learn how to sell, it's da da da. And if somebody's ready for that, they may be like, oh, okay, cool. But often, especially for the people that I want to support, they're like, I'm uncomfortable with sales. But if I tell a story of, and this is the reality of it, part of the reason why my business struggled so much over a decade ago was my discomfort with sales. I was afraid of getting rejected. I procrastinated it. I avoided it. I got so awkward with it. I just hated sales. But as a result of hating sales, it put me in a financial mess, because you don't have a business if you don't have sales, right?
You're doing it right now, aren't you?
I am doing it.
The whole story influencing. No, keep going. It's good. It's good.
I am doing it, but it's the reality. So I had to face that inner block of mine with sales and face getting rejected. And I was going door to door, and I'd go to 60 to 80 doors a day. And so I did get rejected a bit. But what I found was it didn't matter. And so all my fears were just empty. And the more I faced it, I overcame the fear. And as I overcame the fear, my energy was different when I showed up, which meant people now responded differently to me. And then what do you know? I started to get sales. And so later on, looking back, I'm like, it was my blocks, right? It was my fears. I didn't grow up around people that were comfortable with sales. I selling and all that. It was just something to me. Salespeople were slimy. So I had all these limiting beliefs that were getting in my way. So when I tell that story, it creates a space where people can go, oh, right. Like there could be something there for me. Yeah, I do hate sales. Oh, I do get uncomfortable at it. Wait a minute. Maybe that is an inner block that I have that I need to deal with, which is very different than me just saying, hey, you need to learn sales, right? And take my sales program.
Yeah. And you were there for kind of my sales journey with my real estate program. Is I had started a new program when Chris and I were in Panama, and I was on the phone 4 or 5 hours a day. I literally made 10,000 calls that year to sellers, and my business, totally changed around, and I got masterful at the script. And so that story of like, but when you tell the story, and you did this too, you do this well when you tell us, especially when you have more time, is like to develop the pain points in your journey. So no matter what you're selling, like, hey, when I started doing this real estate thing, like I used to feel like I wanted to vomit before I got on calls, right? Like I felt like all this hesitation, my energy would drain. I was anxious. I would get on the calls and my voice would tremble. And people are like, they connect with that pain, right? They're like, oh my God, that's how I feel. Yeah. Well, guess what? I made these calls. I shifted my focus to meeting their needs, and I didn't care if I got the sale or not. I just started, seeing if I could help people. Call after call, I started getting better and more confident. I honed in my script. I got this world-class script now. And I did, I think like 20 deals that year, and the same the next year. And I grew 80 units in a year and a half. Oh yeah. How many of you want to buy my script for $199? Right? Like it's a totally different life. Yeah. Oh my God, my whole life can change with this script versus like, hey, I got this hypnotic script that I buy real estate with, right? That story is what takes people on the journey, the emotional journey, the conflict, the fear, the resolution of living the dream life. And if you can tell stories like that, you can really accelerate your business.
Yeah. You know what? That was so awesome to be there and watch you go through that. Like that was an amazing experience for anybody listening. Like it was exactly like Nick was saying. Like I remember he was building this. He was just so dedicated to it, and he was like spending the time making the calls. And I could see the days when he was just like, like I got to go do this, and like would go and like run down the beach to like change his state and change his energy, and then come back and like get down and make the next sales call and just keep going. And now he's built this thing that's amazing, and that's the recipe. But when we don't have that driving force, right? The thing that's going to push us through that comfort zone, then it's too easy to like, oh, I'm going to just try the next thing. I'm going to take the next course. I'm going to go to the next event. I'm going to go to read the next book. And we just end up avoiding it, but we never get masterful and we never build the thing. But to your point about going deeper in the emotion, you're completely right. Like for me at the time, avoiding sales, it'd be like, I was in this state of just like, almost like, I don't know, looking back, it seemed like a depression or something. It was like, I would wake up and I would just feel the weight of just the stress and the agony. I just wanted to close my eyes and go back to sleep and just sink into the bed. You know, it was like wanting to avoid it.
If you're an entrepreneur and you haven't felt that, you're not a real entrepreneur, right? Like, I mean, it's kind of par for the course. I mean,
yeah, man. Yeah, 100%. And that's it. And so then that leads into the mindset piece, right? Which I don't know if you'll make the leap there, but when I started teaching it, I was like teaching all strategy. Like, oh, here's the steps. Here's how you can build an audience and attract people. And here's how to do the sales script and, later realizing that, oh, the script is one, like all of the strategy is one thing, but the bigger thing, probably the 80% of it, is actually the mindset to face the discomfort or to be consistent or, to deal with those pieces.
Yeah. So let's go there in a minute. I want to summarize real quick, and then I want to talk about whether we should outsource our marketing, and then we can get into like the specifics of the mindset. So, we talked about, there's different types of traffic. There's cold, warm, and hot traffic, and you have to speak to them differently. We talked about how to find your avatar, how to, know where that person is on their journey. And if you try to work with everybody, you're going to work with nobody. Right. Mm-hmm. And so look at your life, your progression. Generally, that's what you're going to take people through. We talked about how to use stories, how to use that internal conflict to deliver, to persuade your audience and your people to work with you. And one little kind of caveat of that is to use specifics as much as possible, right? Specific language, specific outcomes, specific avatar. That's how we attract things from the universe, is by being very clear, very specific in the outcome. And then, I think the only other thing with this, Chris, is like getting really clear on who you are and what you do. So for me, it was like, I just decided I want to be the best in the world. I want to be the world-renowned expert in one thing. And for me, it's subconscious programming, right? So for the audience, like if they're trying to do too many things or they don't have this clear, like, this is who I am in this space, like I'm going to be the world expert, I think you're really pushing uphill or paddling up river. I'm trying to come up with a good metaphor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. And that's something you and I've talked about a ton, the one thing, narrowing it down. So I'd almost categorize that in a mindset piece, but it was both. So the trying to do too many things, the bouncing through ideas, that not going deep enough. And one of the ways I think of it is, it's kind of like, when you're trying to figure something out and you're thinking about it all the time and you're just pondering it, you're researching it, you're looking at it, you're thinking about it in the shower, going to bed, you wake up and you're like, oh, I got ideas. And you're like just continually improving it. It's like when we put the power of our consciousness into our marketing, right? Into really building this, we tap into the insights we need, whether you want to say it's coming from subconscious or from higher power or both. It's like we really tap into both of those. And I think of it like, if you wanted to get traffic, say from social media, you want to get it on your website, you want to get them on the phone, and you want to get them to buy. That's 4 steps, right? Social, they've got to come and see it. And then click into your website, from your website on the phone and converting on the phone. Let's call that 4 steps. That means that's 4 puzzles that essentially you have to figure out. So imagine you're sitting at a table, you got a puzzle in front of you, you're working on, but now you got 4 different puzzles that you need to figure out to get the client. But when people go, okay, well, I'm doing that, but I'm also going to do a YouTube channel. So now they're adding another few puzzles in. And then they're like, well, I'm going to do this thing over here. And they're adding a few more puzzles in. Next thing you know, they got a table of about 20 puzzles that they're working on all at once. And this is really what slows down, is we're not pouring our consciousness into mastering the clarity of the one puzzle at a time. And that is a thing. And I actually, before this interview, I called my mom and I was like, hey, I'm curious. I feel like part of what's made me successful with all this is that I just have this ability to obsess about one thing until I fully master it. And she's like, it's funny. She's like, you've always had that. And I'm like, well, when was I was trying to look for the clue. Like, was there a turning point where something caused me to be that way? And she's like, the youngest I can remember, I bought this remote control helicopter when I was like 13. I'd worked a job and at this farm to save money, and I bought this helicopter. And it came and it was like a million pieces, man. Like, it was insane. It was a big helicopter, right? Remote control, like gas engine, it was a legit thing. And she's like, that thing came and we looked at it and we thought, oh, you're screwed. Like, there's no way you're going to be able to do this. And she's like, you didn't sleep for like 3 days. Like, you sat there and you just every piece meticulously. I was like 13, 14 at the time. She's like, I couldn't believe when I watched you build this thing over time. And for me, I just kept thinking, like, what was that? Like, why did I have this thing to just like narrowly focus? And she's like, we couldn't think of it. We were on the phone. She's like, as a kid, you were always like that. So for some reason, I had that ability. Maybe something later will come out, or maybe you can hypnotize me and we'll find what the key is. But I actually just think that's been the thing that's really helped me with this, is that narrow focus. Let me just obsess about this thing until it's working, until it's converting, until it's, it's dialed in, it's the right recipe. And then you can grow it. Like, once you get it working, you can grow it.
And I don't think it's necessarily bad to bounce around in the beginning as you're kind of finding your path and your message and what channels you like. But if you keep bouncing around, you're never going to build a helicopter, right?
100%.
That comes
100%.
with that like obsession of, this is who I am, this is the outcome, and this is the specific channel that's going to get me there. And then staying with that channel long enough for it to be on autopilot. And now for me, like, I get leads coming in for real estate all day long. I make a couple calls a week, do a couple deals a month, like, no big deal. And I know yours is the same way with your marketing business.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of the spoils of obsession for an amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That work that I did 12 years ago, 11 years ago, now, we get 4 or 5 sales a day, creates basically financial freedom for me. And I spend a couple hours on it right now. And it's just leads and sales, just clients just coming in every single day from work that I did 12 years ago and left it on autopilot. I don't spend a dime on marketing now. I haven't spent any money there since. But it was getting the right recipe. And if I could tag one thing onto that, is the hiring marketing people.
Yeah, let's go there. That's perfect.
Is that so early on when I was doing the door-to-door and I started making money going door-to-door, I knew I wanted to move online because door-to-door sucks, right? Like, it's a grind. The weather, I'm in Canada, it would be cold, winter. Like, I was literally out walking around the snow going door-to-door. And so then the first step was, hire a social media marketing manager, right? $500 a month.
You got it made. Done.
This is it. This is the whole thing. This is going to be it. 4 or 5 months later, a bunch of content that didn't make any sense and not one lead or sale. And then the next one was hiring somebody to build a funnel. $5,000 US dollars too, not these Canadian dollars, like US dollars, 5,000. And a few months of work, again, I was like, this is it. I need a funnel. Man, I was so silly. Of course it was a funnel. Build it. Again, nothing happens. And I'm like, what the F, right? I totally confused. And then, I'm still making money the other route and getting there. And then I end up committing to this marketing agency, sold me a big thing. They got a team of people. They're going to do the whole bit, content creation, whatever. It was a $35,000 commitment over a year.
But it's going to pay back like that, right?
Oh man, yeah, I was going to make that in a few months, and I was convinced. I was just so dedicated to building the business, and I was believed that I couldn't do it, right? That it couldn't be me. I don't know how to do this. I'm not techie enough. I'm not, I don't know these things. So thought I had to hire, and then again worked with them for like 6-7 months. It didn't generate anything. And that's when I was like, okay, wait a minute. I've got to figure this out. Like, what's going on? And that's where I really started to dig into content creation and understanding speaking to the audience and to the problem and all the things we just went on about. And then once I got it and it started working, what I realized was that we, as the visionary, the founder, the person with the message in our heart, the creator, we have to be the first person to know how to create our message, right? How to share it, how to sell it, all of those. And then we can hire technical skill, like the YouTube person, the website person, the whatever. We can hire the technical ability to go share the stuff when we're clear on it. The problem is when we try to hire people and we're basically thinking they're going to create the message, they're going to come up with all this, like, it's just not the right piece. And the one little analogy that I use is building a house. It's like, if you want to build a house, you've got a vision in your head. You got to get it on paper. You got to get this blueprint down. And then once you have it, you go hire the people to build your vision. You don't go to the builder and say, hey, can you give me a vision and build a thing for me? They're going to be like, what, are you crazy? What are you talking about?
They'll take your money though. They'll take your money though, right?
Oh, they'll take your money. Yeah, they'll take your deposit. And it's the same thing in building the business. Like we've got a vision. We got to get the blueprint. We got to get it on paper or get it somewhere and then go hire the people that can help us build it.
But I think that only comes from like you talking to lots of people, you figuring out the pain points, you figuring out what you're good at, where you want to be, what you want to teach or give or sell. Like, and that takes a lot of time in the space. Like I used to just get on Facebook and teach and teach in some of the groups that we're in. And it was like hours and hours and hours of that. So I was like, oh, like I have a message. I have something that's different. I have something that people can use. And I realized like who it was resonating with. But even then, like I remember I built my body language course, my NLP course, my language patterns course. And I hired this guy. I was like, oh, I'm just going to build these. And then I'm going to hire this guy to do my copywriting and like done. Like I'm going to be making, I'm going to be making money on all my courses. Like that's it.
That's it. Right.
Like $8,000 and I got the copy back and I was like, this kind of sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just, it never went anywhere, like I got a couple sales from people that know me, but not like, and then I did the same thing again a year or two ago, building this webinar, and this guy built this funnel for me. And I was like, I can literally do better. And so I learned how to do it all. I'm not saying this is right for you, but I learned how to do it because I'm constantly creating content and I want to be able to put it on the internet in the right way with the right message and the right look. And for me, hiring people to do that was like $10,000 just flushed down the toilet.
Yeah.
I did that enough. And I kind of obsessed over learning this stuff. And I spent time with you that now I can do it on my own. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm clear about who I work with and sales are coming in.
I'm so proud of you. You did it.
It was, well, I'm still doing it, right? I'm still learning.
Still doing it. And we both are.
But I've developed technical skills. I've developed storytelling and copywriting skills. And it's developed me into a different person that if I had just hired it out, I wouldn't have been that person.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I completely love that.
I kept going to you like, hey man, why don't you just build this for me? Like, why don't you just do this thing? And you're like, look, man, I would love to. I just don't think that's not the path. Like you have to learn this for yourself. And, I'm so glad that was your advice to me.
Well, I struggled with that for a while. Like one of the barriers for me. So when I was building my company, I had this one guy that was my, he was an employee, but he became a buddy, like a best friend. I love this guy to pieces and almost like a partner. And so we figured all this stuff out, mostly together. Right. And we got to this point and he left actually to start a marketing agency and do a bunch of work like that. And every time I talked to him, we kind of had this like trust no one mentality. And I'm like, well, that just seems like a limiting belief. And do I expect, like, would I really say to people that they have to go out and master this stuff? And I was stuck there for a while. I was like, well, what do I say? Like, do I tell people, don't hire anyone, do I tell them that yes, you have to be the person to go figure it out? And I had a hard time, and I realized that actually I got to where I'm like, yeah, that is the thing to say. But with that, is that if you're really not comfortable with certain things, then don't start there, right? Like when I work with people, it's let's build a plan that's right for you, for what you're going to feel good about. If you hate video, you cringe at the idea of doing video, let's not start with video, right? Like if you're totally not techie, let's not start there. Now, maybe at some point you need to push your comfort zone and get there, but let's start with something that's going to be easy for you and easy wins that you're going to enjoy, you're going to be passionate about. I like being on video, so I'll do video. And so it really is that take the time to create in your creative genius, like in a space where you're going to thrive, you're going to feel good, you'll be excited about it. Maybe it's in person at live events, maybe it's getting on stages, maybe it's stuff like this, like interviews, maybe it's writing, maybe it's YouTube. Find the thing and don't let people tell you what you should do and think to yourself that you should be doing stuff other people are doing. Find the things that you really resonate with and you really enjoy. Because I know that there's some people that listen to a lot of what we said and they're probably like, oh God, like the idea of all that makes me cringe, right?
Well, that's a great point. And I think for me, like I just drank the Kool-Aid from Russell Brunson and the ClickFunnels and like sales funnels and all that stuff. And so I wanted to be able to build that. But really like if you're listening and you're like, look, I'm a therapist or a hypnotist or, a coach in some specific area, like I don't want to learn how to do all that. Like you don't have to. You can keep a really simple system as long as it was like you talked about where you're just solving one little puzzle at a time. And so that might look like a podcast or a YouTube video to a sales call to them working with you. Like it might be that simple, but you have to do an experiment with that process enough to have that one line mastered, and you will do way more business than someone who has this complicated funnel if you take the time to master the steps in your business.
Yeah. And the one last little thing that goes along with that, although I feel like we could just keep saying one more thing, is going back to the plan, is essentially even the sales script. Like when you're doing your first call, right? Say if somebody is a therapist or hypnotist or, coach of some sort, that first call when somebody has seen your social media thing, they've seen your video, they want to come in, they want to talk to you, they're like, hey, I'm kind of interested to hear more. The first call, make no mistake, is a sales call. And where I so often see people in the space with open hearts that just want to serve, and they go in, they don't have a plan and they don't have a script, and then they end up coaching or serving or jumping right in, trying to work with the person on the first call. So the person gets a bunch of ahas. You feel good because you had this great call, right? Like it gives you, a boost. You feel like you're doing something great, but the person didn't commit to long-term results. They didn't get their money out. When they really pay you your worth for your service, that serves both of you at the highest level. Like when they can commit long-term, they're going to get transformation. Otherwise, they're leaving a call with just some information.
Yeah. And I learned this doing the real estate stuff, right? Like I made thousands of calls without doing a deal. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, because I think I'm so good at building rapport. And so that's what I did. I was like on these calls and I was getting people to like me. And I realized the sales process is actually, rapport is important, especially in the beginning, but it's actually, you need a little bit of conflict because you have to take them from where they are to where they're going. And if they were already there, like they wouldn't need you. Right. Yeah. And so I used to like, I'd make offers and I'd just be quiet. Oh, is that the best you can do? And I'd let them sit in that discomfort, right? Because they already like and trust me. We've talked for a minute, but then I'd have to make them uncomfortable a little bit to get them to the edge of like feeling their pain point so that they were willing to take action. And if you don't have that on a sales call, you don't have any action. You just have someone that you like and connect with and, oh, I really like that Chris guy, good experience, but I'm not compelled to buy from him. Does that sound?
Yeah. And I bet when you started, it was uncomfortable to sit in that silence with them, right? You probably want to break it first and probably did sometimes.
Yeah.
So when I started hiring salespeople, we jumped in, we started doing role plays, and I created scripts, and we really spent time breaking down the step by step of how to, have a good call. And I hired this one girl, and she didn't really have a lot of sales experience, but she was driven, and there was just something about her that we were inspired about. And I remember we did our role plays and that, but then she'd get on the phone and I would sit beside her and I could just see her body language. Like she'd be nervous and I'd be like, sit back, relax, take a deep, and I'm like literally beside her, ask this question. And she'd I don't want to ask that question. Right. And I'd be like, come on, you can do it. Ask it. Put your feet up. And so it was in the beginning, that probably sounds extreme. It was like boot camp, but man, she could close. She got to where she was closing she was so close to $100,000 a month. And she was able to hit 98,000. The goal was 100. She just was there. And from a place of where she was actually uncomfortable. And then she was a closer. And the transformation you were talking about, who she became in that process. Yeah. She walked with more confidence. You could just see that she was more sure of herself. She would speak. She became the leader, the sales manager of the team, and was teaching other people. And she had the transformation because she pushed through her own discomfort, right? And we all have that when we start in our sales calls. When it comes down to how does that sound, right? Or are you ready to go ahead, or let's go ahead, or you've got to do better than that? They're uncomfortable questions. But when we develop the muscle, we get the reward from it too.
Yeah. And it just comes to mind, one of our mentors, Rock Thomas, he's the consummate salesman, right? And he's always selling, and he has no sales hesitation. And sometimes people are like, whoa, he's always selling. And I'm like, I love seeing that, because he's closing and he's always making sales. We have to get over our own insecurities and our own hesitations and ask for the sale and go for it. And once you do, and once you have that confidence, people just want to do business with you, right? Once you're it used to take me 3 or 4 calls to figure out if to do a deal. And now I'm like, great, here's your offer. I'm going to send the paperwork now. Do you want to sign it, or are you not ready to sell yet? No, I'm ready.
I love that you said that.
Well, I do something like that, but I'm like, when we meet at the house, are you ready to get some paperwork done while I'm there? You're ready. I'm ready to close. Are you? That's what I'm telling them. And if they're like, well, I got to talk to some people, I'm not going to the house. I'm like, look, when you're ready to sell, let me know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You know what I love about that too, is it makes me reflect a little bit on myself, of also being in that, where now the sales process is so short. I do it, and then I hand all our stuff off to my assistant, and she runs with everything. But I still do those calls because they're so fast for me.
They're fun once you get good at it.
Fun.
It's so fun to do deals and to close people. Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah, I enjoy it. And what I find interesting, one thing to add to that is, I also believe you got to believe that you got a good product, and you've got to have the right thing. I believe that our product is the best that we deliver. We've got unmatched service and guarantees and things like that. So I believe it, and I created all that in the product for the salespeople to have that confidence. But then people come to us, and we're not the cheapest out there. And sometimes they're like, well, this company's cheaper. But then when they come back and they're like, yeah, you know what? We're going to pay more, and we're going to come work with you. And it's because I knew how to get to the root of the things that they cared about, speak in the right way, present the right solution, and then they just choose us. And it's and then we do deliver, and they come back and they're like, I'm glad we did go with you, right?
Yeah. And I think, for me in the beginning, and a lot of people, you're like, well, does my thing really work? If I hypnotize someone, is this going to work? Are they really going to have an experience? And, I had doubts for a long time. And the more I stepped into those doubts, and I just did it anyway, and went and saw what happened. And I did it for free. I talked for free. I, did coaching for free until I got to this point where I'm like, oh shit, I have a skill. I have something here. And now when I get on the phone for, let's say, to sell resonance, I'm like, listen, I know you're going to have an amazing experience. And I'm so confident in what I'm delivering, that if you're not quite there yet, keep mastering your thing and you'll get there. Just don't stop. It's constantly stepping through that comfort zone. That's what's going to make you into the person that's capable of building that type of business.
Yeah. 100%. Love that.
So, all right. So I guess, we've talked about a lot of mindset stuff already, but let's kind of
Yeah.
maybe summarize or visit some new things. So Chris, what are some of the reasons? Because if someone's mindset isn't to that place of actually building the business, doesn't matter how hard they work, how much content they put out, like they're never going to get there. Right. So what are the pitfalls that you see a lot of people that have something to sell, but are struggling to build their business? What are some patterns you see there?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is, and I know this is one that you'll light up as well when I say it, is being in the energy of the result. So interestingly, I've had probably 4, maybe 5 conversations that have all turned into mini coaching sessions in the last 2 days. I mean, they're happening all the time, but the last 2 days, it just seems like everywhere I turn, it's the same conversation over and over and over. And it really was, what, not just the clarity of like, what is it you want to create, but what is it going to feel like, say, in a year from now? I did a process with a girl yesterday, and, she was like struggling. She's focusing on some challenges that she's having right now. And I'm like, well, as I know that all of what I'm saying, I know is like completely in what you believe. Where it's, well, what we focus on is what we go towards. And so she's telling me all of what she doesn't want. I'm like, okay, well, what is it going to look like in a year from now? Well, I don't want da 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 da. I'm like,
I'm
okay,
not going to be stressed.
yeah, right. So it's like all the things she doesn't want. And I'm like, well, so we do a closed eye thing, and I get her to step into what will it actually look and feel like when you create this. How are you going to feel? Like, let's put aside for a second what you're actually creating. Just tell me how you're going to feel. Like, tell me how that's going to be. And she's like, oh my gosh, like my body's going to feel like more relaxed and more confident. I'll feel more upbeat. And so we really tapped into that a couple minutes. It's not anything major, couple minutes. And then it was like, okay, well, now tell me, what do you want to create? Oh, well, I want to go create da 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 da. And she just started rhyming it off. And so that's one thing that I do daily. I'm sure that you do daily as well. Is really tapping into that future space of when it's created that is going to allow me to stay focused in the short term of being motivated to the goal.
I could spend a month talking about just this topic, and I think you know that, but like, this is what I do for my event, right? Like putting on an event for me, like I've watched, Rock and Tony Robbins and all these people. I've been to so many events. I'm like, that seems like so far away. And so I was like, all right, I just got to be in the energy of it. And what I would do is I would close my eyes and I would see at the end of my event, I would look people in the eye. I would see their faces. I would see the tears of gratitude, the emotion, the breakthroughs. Like I would see that and I would feel it. And that's my anchor point. Like every time I'm like, is this really going to work? I just go to that. And my subconscious mind generates everything along the way to make that happen. Like these ideas, the content, what I say, like none of it comes from me. It comes from the subconscious. And so when you can step into the energy of that end state, it changes your brain, it changes your energy. It literally changes which dopamine pathway you use. There's so many benefits to this. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I like I said, I knew you'd lit up on that because, that's something that in a way, I kind of feel that maybe we discovered, really got clear on a lot of that together. I mean, end of the day, maybe I got it from you and thought I came up with it, or, maybe we are one. But yeah, is that. So I see people that are then either focusing on what they don't want or ping ponging between ideas, which goes back to the puzzle thing, right? So they got too many puzzles. That's a huge pitfall. Another one is then not having the right people around them. So I just started a mastermind this past week. We did our first call on it, which was great. And my intention with that was when I saw that people were taking these courses, but they weren't taking consistent action, I realized that they need to be in an environment where everybody's focused on the same thing. And I had this experience years ago. I wanted to get into doing real estate investing. This actually kind of ties to how we met, really. And in my area, it was sort of an undiscovered tourist destination. It was still a little off the radar, but this boutique hotel was going in. And my gut, I knew that real estate was going to explode there. And I was like, I put an offer on a house. I got an accepted offer on this house for it was like $123,000, right? And which, just saying those words right now, you'll get the punchline in a second. And so it was accepted offer, and I got nervous and I backed out. I chickened out, right? And then a buddy of mine and I had an offer accepted for like 118 grand on a different house, and we backed out. And I had this what am I doing here? And that's when I joined M1, met you, and I got around a lot of people that were doing real estate deals. And as soon as I was just spending time in the environment with other people, and some of those people in there were doing, be nothing to hear people doing 10, 15, some of the speakers in that maybe getting 50 or 100 places a year or more, a month maybe. And it just raised my thinking to where the things I was afraid of, I just it all became possible. And I changed being in proximity to them. And after the one event where we hung out a ton, I think it was Whistler, and we skied a ton. And
I wasn't at Whistler. I was in Steamboat.
Steamboat. So after one of the events, I came out and I was so charged up, and I just was immediately came back and bought a house. And one thing I forgot was, in the meantime, just before that hotel did open and real estate prices skyrocketed. And that one I could have had for 123 grand or whatever sold a year and a half later for 350, and they didn't do anything to it. And then now that same house is probably worth about 900. And it just was my fear getting in the way. So I came out, joined that mastermind, came out of that, and I was so fired up about real estate, and then immediately flipped a house, doubled my money, and bought another place and made a ton of money. And so the point is not about doing real estate, but it's that we have to surround ourselves with supportive people, not like I had 15 years ago that were like, you're an idiot for trying your own business, but people that are also trying to solve the same problems and talking the same language.
So there's two shortcuts to success, Chris. One of them is to learn how to program your subconscious. That's what we touched on in the beginning. And then
is number two to come to your event?
Come to my event. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
right.
Then there's a third. Well, come to my event kind of tied in. The third one is to be around the people who are having the results you want. So for me, I wanted to be a hypnotist. I started hanging out with the world's best hypnotists. I wanted to be a real estate investor. I joined real estate mastermind groups. I wanted to learn marketing. I started hanging out with you, and I joined your mastermind group. And then being in that space, you're in a different frequency. You have different ideas. You have a different peer group and accountability. And, so you've got your marketing mastermind, and I've got one on subconscious programming. And the people in there, they talk about it. They think about it. They view the world from that lens, and they get the results of their peer group, right?
Yeah, 100%. Because even in this call, I mean, look at how much we've covered in this call, right? Somebody could have pages and pages of notes, guaranteed people do. And it's like when you've been to an event or you read a book and you feel like you've got all the ahas and you're like, okay, now it's going to be different. And then all of a sudden it's weeks or months from now, you probably didn't action anything. Maybe you actioned one thing out of it. And it's like you kind of forget all that. And so then you end up looking for the next book or the next event, right? But when you're surrounded with the right people, or you've got the right coach, if that's the needed thing, or some accountability or whatever it may be, it keeps you on track consistently. And that's when I do coaching with people, it's kind of silly because it often comes back to this. I've been working with this one client for just over a year, and she grew her business by 300% last year after most years it being 20-25% year over year. And we started working together, and literally all it was is every week just reconnecting to, what do you need to do? Where are you going? She would come with this, I got this new great idea. I'm thinking about this thing. Sounds great. But hold on, let's go back to the first idea. Let's reconnect to and then realign. And so it's just having the right people around us that aren't just going to add more ideas in, because more distraction isn't what we need. It's a consistent focus. So whatever you need to get you to action consistently.
Yeah. And that's definitely something value that you've brought to me as well. Cause I'm in the energy of what I do, and I love it. And I have ideas. I'm like a mile a minute. My brain doesn't shut off. Ideas come to me in my sleep, or content and things. And I'm like, so I'm doing the podcast. I got this funnel. I'm getting back into putting YouTube videos out. I want to do this lead magnet thing. I'm also writing 3 books, right? And in that time, none of it gets done. And so every time I'm like, Chris, what do you think about this idea? You're like, oh, that sounds amazing. What about that first thing you were working on? And I'm like, oh shit, you're right.
Oh yeah. We just did that a couple days ago.
Yeah.
We did, and I'm guilty of that too. My latest book that I wrote, Stop Procrastinating Your Purpose. I really hit a lot of this, and I wanted to write this book a few years ago, and I was like thinking about it and thinking, okay, I got to get to that book. And, side note, who knows if I even really needed to write the book or not, but it was an idea. And I procrastinated until I finally was just like, okay, wait a minute. I'm not practicing my own principles on this. Like, it's the things that I'm telling people. And then I just sat down, and when I tapped into it, I poured the book out in about 5-6 weeks. It was done and it was easy. Well, now getting to the point of launching this mastermind, well, that took me a while, but it's the same thing. And so it's like, even though, here sharing these principles, it doesn't mean I'm free of having to use the tools, right? Like, when I don't use the tools, I don't get the result. And I often don't use the tools. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I got to come back to using the tool, right? Like, using my own thing. And that one client that I'm working with, she always says that. She always comes up and she's like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like you just keep saying the same thing to me over and over and over. And so then on our last call, I was like, well, let me tell you about a breakdown that I had not following my own advice. And so I told her a story of my own, not listening to it and forgetting, coming unconscious to it. And then she's like, oh, it makes me feel a lot better to know that you're human too, right? And it just is about applying it consistently over time, but having somebody or multiple people there or some way of supporting you and staying focused.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important. So getting clarity on who you are, who you want to work with, living in the end state, right? I don't know if I have my Neville Goddard book here, or Psycho-Cybernetics, but going to the end state of what you want to experience and setting that emotionally as the target for your subconscious, being around a like-minded peer group, constantly testing and solving that one thing, the customer's journey on that path, right? All of the puzzle pieces of their first step, second step, third step, until you've really mastered one funnel and it can run automatically before you go on to the next thing, right? Is there anything else we missed as far as mindset barriers or blocks on this journey that you've seen a lot of?
So I guess to stem off the one thing a little bit is the distractions of just life, just reality. I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and we've had here with struggles with daycare being closed, like all the things COVID here, and which has caused daycare, and like anybody sick and you're out for a while. And I was finding it really hard to get my mastermind launched. I actually went through a little phase where I was overwhelmed with it, and I was questioning, God, the universe. I'm like, it just went on for weeks and weeks. We were without daycare for a month. And then my partner as well is, she's had braces on, and she was having some health struggles of her own. And I just kept having this like, okay, so what's the message here? Like, do I need to delay this, put it on hold, do it differently? Do I need to quit? Like, am I just trying to do the wrong thing? Sometimes you get in that zone, you're just asking that question like, okay, is this the wrong thing? And in the end, the message that I got was everything's going to always just try to get in the way, and distractions in life, not even just creative business ideas, but everything in life, right? Or all of a sudden, oh, I should work on this thing. Wait, no, I got to go to the bathroom even. And it's all trying to pull us away from it. And we just have to keep moving forward. And if we can one of the things that came to me working with a productivity coach was, if we can just be intentional about one thing every day. Now, maybe it's 2 or 3, but one thing on top of the rest of your world, right? Because like with you and me with our other businesses and all the things, there's stuff that's going to happen every day, no matter what. Workouts, all of that, right? But if we can be intentional and do one little step every day towards that bigger vision, that thing we want to create, and make sure it's progress, not perfection. Not getting caught in needing it to be perfect. That's a whole other layer of self-sabotage, right?
Well, I think that's it's an insecurity, right? Needing to be perfect so you don't get judged, and that stops people from moving forward at all.
100%, totally. And making sure that we're doing something, and we keep moving, and knowing it's probably going to take time, but we have to do it every single day. And I think that as you get the wins and you start making progress, you build momentum. And as you build momentum, you make more progress. And the more you go on and on and on. And so I think that's really a key of kind of going back to the one thing, but it's just knowing that life, everything, And it's valid reasons, right? Like valid things that nobody could fault you for putting the stuff on hold or for getting or delaying. But at the end of the day, you just don't get the result.
We all have relationship challenges. We all have health challenges. We all have, living and trying to make healthy meals and exercise and travel and do all the things,
Economy
right?
and
Right? Like, yeah, we're all have COVID, and like, this isn't, you're not the
yeah,
only one. But I think
yeah.
it's, do you want to be a manager of that situation, or do you want to be a creator of your life? And to be a creator,
Ooh.
you got to set time aside to create, right? Like, that's got to be your first and best effort. And for me, it's like, I wake up, if I'm having, this is on a good day, I wake up, I meditate, do a little workout. And then I'm like, before I'm even looking at my phone, I'm creating something, whether that's, emails, sales funnel, scripting something. Like, I do that first, and I'm building that foundation for my business before I go into manager mode. And so I think that's, if you're listening and you're trying to build something, set time aside, keep all your technology up. If I'm writing something, I'll usually journal it, and then I'll put it to a computer, because there's no distractions of checking my email and other things coming in,
Yeah.
when I just have a journal. So
Man, I was
yeah,
getting tingles when you were saying that. Like I was getting the like, oh man, that because it just was resonating all over again for me. That's it, right? Like that is a key.
yeah. Well, Chris, anything else, anything we missed, anything else you want to reiterate or touch on again?
Uh, what I really just want to say is, there's somebody that's listening right now. There's many people, but speaking of somebody, probably you, that it's your time, right? When we continually feel pulled to create, pulled to do something, there's a reason for that. And there's that one book, The Top Regrets of the Dying, and in that, they're talking about people not living life on their terms and following the things they want to do. And it just, our time here is limited, right? I believe we're eternal beings, but our time on this planet is really short. And often it feels like, well, if I just surrender to what the universe wants, if I just let it unfold on its own, it's all going to be perfect. And yeah, I agree with that. And also we are the creators, right? We are the manifestors, and there's a method to manifestation. And it doesn't just come in me sitting on a beach all the time, just being like, I'm going to trust the universe, when it's like the universe wants me to do everything, but I've got to be narrowly focused. And right now, there's so many of us with gifts and skills and things that people in the world needs. Like for those of you listening, like somebody right now is waiting for you to go out there and put your thing out, and we make it about ourselves, but this is about them. And they need you to do that right now. And it's time, right? We feel that that people are ready for transformation, that we're ready for a new paradigm, for things to move forward. That's why we have this calling. And it may be uncomfortable, right? You may be pushing your comfort zone. You may be kicking and screaming. You may be crying, trying to get it done. I've done all of those things while building and creating, and that's the path, and you can do it. And I just want to encourage you to do something. And if you're coming off this call on a, feeling inspired and feeling really good, now is the time to commit to your next step. Make a commitment now while you're in this state, before you leave and a million distractions come and everything else gets in the way. But decide right now, what is the next step that's going to make you stay committed and focused on that.
Yeah. So we'll get how they can get a hold of you and get some of your stuff in just a moment. But as you were talking about that, I got this realization that I think one thing you and I do pretty well is we listen to that gut feeling, right? Like that little voice in our head, or that little subtle, quiet voice in our gut or in our heart. That's like, hey man, you're meant for something more. Like, hey, create this, jump off of this, go do this, right? Like quit that job. And I think many of you listening probably have that like subtle knowing, that subtle feeling of, this is what I should really be doing. I should really leave this relationship. I should really quit this job. I should go for this relationship. Whatever that subtle little voice is, like every time I've followed that, it's been, oh yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I know you listen to that. And I think for those on here, I think it's, start paying attention to that. And often that's going to lead you into creating something that serves a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah, I got the tingles all over again hearing you say that. Like that's it, right?
Yeah. So Chris, if someone has something, they want to create it, they want to scale it, they want to understand more about you, like, because there's infinite subtleties on the things we talked about today, right? Like there's so many layers of expertise that you've put the thousands of hours into. How can they get a hold of you or find your books and or be
Yep.
part of your program?
Yeah, I got a couple things. I mean, I've got this mastermind. I would love for anybody that feels pulled, they feel inspired, they're ready to come join. But if they're not ready, you can get my book for free if you go to my website. I'm sure we'll have the link, just chriscrawford.ca. But we'll have the link somewhere, right, that they
Yep,
can
I'll put
check
the
out.
link in the notes. Yep.
And then we'll also, I also have a free workshop. So it's basically a session that I've done with a group of coaches about building the business around what they want to do. They can sign up and watch this for free and check it out. And it hits on a lot of stuff that we covered, but it kind of breaks it down a little more step by step. And so they can join in and check all that out. Because I just really want to see people go and live their purpose and create their calling and live in that space. So that stuff's available.
Well, I'm super grateful for your time, and more than that, I'm super grateful for our friendship and for always being there for me to bounce ideas off of, and always keeping me accountable to what I'm creating and keeping me on that path as well. So thanks for your time, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Likewise, man. It's been I wouldn't be who I am without you in my life and my whole family, and you just feel like a part of my family, and yeah, super grateful to have you and for everything you've helped me learn. So thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Later, brother.